Hey, I want to tell you that a friend of mine found a diamond when he was prospecting for gold. Now, he was actually in the Midwest, and you don't normally think of the Midwest for gold, but he was in Indiana, and a number of the other states in the Midwest you can get gold if you're careful and you know what you're doing. But he was prospecting for gold. He was finding some gold, and he found a small diamond in his concentrates. That's what I want to talk about today. You know, there are a lot of gemstones that can be found while you're out gold prospecting. And so today's video is the Prospector, the Gold Prospector's Guide to Precious Stones. And there's a lot of things that you can find. Today I'm dry washing, but you know, in the concentrates, the heavy materials, addition to gold, but you can get, you know, that's why you get black sand in your heavy materials. You get, you know, other heavy minerals. Today I will get little bits of oxidized pyrite because I'm working next to a vein. I will get that in with my gold. And heavy stuff, concentrates, I mean, that's when you're sluicing or panning, dry washing, recirculating sluice, anything where you're concentrating the gold by its density, you're gonna find heavy minerals in your concentrates. And those heavy minerals can contain precious gemstones, like my friend who found a diamond. But diamonds aren't the only thing you can find in your concentrates. You can find garnets. Garnets are actually quite common in concentrates. You can find places in Australia and Montana, Idaho, where you can find sapphires in your gold concentrates. Zircons is another one. There's several minerals. We're going to look at each one of those and how you can find them in your concentrates. Now, are you going to find those everywhere? No, you know, it's not going to be something that there's gemstones everywhere in every gold mining district. It's not that way. But there are places where you can get good results, you can get good gemstones, and you don't want to throw something like that away, right? You know, I've never found a diamond, but I found some really nice garnets in my concentrates. So we're going to examine all that stuff. We're going to kind of break the Prospector's Guide to Precious Gems into two pieces. One is gems that are dense and heavy, and you will find them in your concentrates. The other is going to be gems that are light, and you may find them right on the surface when you're out metal detecting or something like that, if you're hiking or looking around on the surface. I found some really nice gems just with my eyeballs while out metal detecting. You know, not in the hole that I dug, but, you know, just walking around, tramping around the hills. You know, I found some good quartz crystals, found some really nice agate and some other things. So we'll look at the two halves, the dense gems that you find in your concentrates and the lighter gems that you may find just on the surface of the ground. And so that's what we're going to take a look at in this video. So I think you'll find it really interesting and something you want to know so that you don't throw away something really valuable. There are gems that are durable and strong and hard and can survive in a stream environment without being broken up into bits, can survive in a stream environment and end up with your cons, you know, when you're done at the end of the day and you look through what you've recovered as far as gold. Don't just toss out, you know, oh, this is the gold, everything else, that's junk, throw it away. Yeah, that's not necessarily true. You may have some gemstones in your concentrates. Like my friend who found a diamond, you know, you may have something valuable in your cons. And if you just say, oh, whatever's gold, I'm throwing that out, you may be throwing away for some valuable stuff. So let's dig into this and take a closer look. The first thing you need to do when you're, you know, considering looking for gemstones in your cons is to go through your concentrates very thoroughly. And usually what I would recommend is, you know, that you would screen the material so that the really fine sand and stuff you can look at separately. And honestly, when you have a set of cons and you separate out the sand from the pebbles and other coarser materials, it makes the panning part of it much easier. So it actually makes things easier for your gold processing too. But if you do like maybe a 10 mesh, that'd be a good mesh. Things smaller than 10 mesh, well, it better be a diamond or some other really valuable stone. So 10 mesh is a pretty good separation. You separate out the stuff that's bigger than a 10 mesh screen, and then you spread it out like on a table or some other flat surface. Best be a surface that's white in color or very light in color. If it's a light tan, that doesn't really make that much difference, but some light color surface that you spread the cons out so you can see through them. Now, if you spread out your cons and you find any coarser gold nuggets, well, hey, congratulations on that. But even if you don't have any big coarser gold in the plus 10 mesh category, you still want to look through for gems. Now, I've found also ore minerals in my concentrates over the years, and they can tell you a lot about the kinds of deposits that are in the area. They can tell you about the geology and that sort of thing. I've found cinnabar and scheelite and barite and other things in my concentrates, and they tell you a lot about the geology of the area and what's maybe contributing the gold that you're looking for. What you're really looking though for as far as gems is stuff that's either fully transparent or mostly transparent. These kinds of things make for the gemstones that you can see through. And if you find anything, no matter what the color, no matter what the shape is, if it's bigger than 10 mesh and it's mostly or fully transparent, you want to set that aside for further examination, because those are the things that have good potential to be gemstones. Now, gemstones come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and colors, and I gotta say that color is one of the weakest and most poor sources for identifying gemstones. So let's say you're sorting through your stuff and you find a clear red stone. Is it a ruby? Maybe. Is it a garnet? Yeah, definitely could be. Is it zircon? Sure, it could be a zircon. Could it be spinel? Yep, spinel absolutely comes in red. And topaz, yeah, there's even some kind of reddish topaz. So, when you look at stones and you say, well, it's a red stone, well, there's probably at least 50 gemstones that come in red. And so, just knowing that it's red doesn't tell you much more than, well, maybe it's one of those 50. And that doesn't really give you the information you need. You want to look instead now at any crystal shape that you can see, or test for hardness or other characteristics that can be used to identify a gem. And it's the characteristics of a gemstone that really tell you what it is. And so for figuring out various gemstones, we're going to look at each one individually and talk about them, because every gemstone has its own personal, its own individual characteristics. Now, not every area that's good for gold has some kind of other gemstones in it. Some do, some don't. But, there are places where they don't have a reputation for having gemstones with the gold, but you might be able to find the odd gemstone with your gold. And if you do have a gemstone in your concentrates, you really don't want to throw that away. You'd be surprised, the truth is, you'd be surprised at how frequently there are certain kinds of gemstones associated with gold. Like I say, not always, not even really the majority, but it's not unusual. And that's why I'm doing this video. And so to go through these, because each gem has its own individual characteristics, we're going to go through the dense gems one at a time. And we're going to start out with, hey, the most valuable, diamond. Let's take a look.
Most people don't realize that diamonds have been found in a number of states in the U.S., not in huge or large numbers, but nonetheless, diamonds have been found. Diamonds have been found by gold prospectors in both Colorado and Wyoming. You see the state line area there. There's a couple of different kimberlite pipes that have been producing diamonds, and diamonds have been found by dredgers. The same thing is true in California. In the old days, the early prospectors found lots of diamonds in their sluice boxes and other operations, and so hundreds of diamonds have been found in California too. Smaller amounts of diamonds have been scattered throughout the U.S. The ones in the Midwest are glacial diamonds that have been transported from Canada, similar to the gold that has been transported down by the effects of the glaciers. A lot of people think that diamonds are found in colorless, near white kind of colors. But the truth is, actually, they're more common in shades of yellow or brown or gray, and only the most valuable ones are the ones that are near colorless. Here's a diamond found in Arkansas at the Diamond Mine Park at Murfreesboro. A number of diamonds are found there every year, and this one you can see is a very obvious brown kind of color, but colorless ones are found there too. But again, this is a known source of diamonds in the United States. Here are some diamond crystals from the state of Wyoming in the United States. Many of these have kind of a brown color, but they have different crystal shapes and different appearances. Some of them are pretty imperfect as crystals, but they're all diamonds, and they have one of the characteristics of diamonds, which is diamonds tend to have a kind of an oily appearance even when they're perfectly dry. Here's some diamond crystals from the state of Colorado. And again, these you can see there's some ones near white, but a lot of them have a shade of gray. The one in the lower right is actually a cut stone. It's already been faceted. But the other characteristic I mentioned, the oily appearance of diamonds, even when they're dry. The other characteristic is its extreme hardness, of course. People have sometimes contacted me and said, "Hey, I think I might have a diamond. It scratches glass." Well, lots and lots, maybe 100 different minerals can scratch glass, and some of them can be quite clear and colorless. So really you want to scratch something like corundum, like the material that sapphire and ruby are made out of. And in a typical hardness test, you can buy these on Amazon, hardness tests. In a typical hardness test, you'll get a little bit of corundum. And if your suspected diamond easily scratches the corundum, which is a hardness 9, then your chances of having a diamond may be pretty good. Now, I've done a whole video on diamonds and identifying diamonds, and you might want to take a look at that if you think you may have a diamond. I'm going to put a link to it right here on the screen, and if you want to take a look at that or maybe come back to it, you can check on this and click on it and take a look at my video.
Okay, next we'll take a look at sapphire. Now this is a mineral called corundum, and if corundum is red, it's a ruby. If it's any other color other than red, it's called a sapphire. So sapphires can be pink or yellow. Most people think of blue, right? But they come in green and orange and all kinds of other colors that aren't red, because if it's red, it's a ruby, right? So let's take a look at sapphire and the characteristics of that.
This is the red ruby form of corundum, and it's not a very high quality crystal. You can see it's opaque. You can't see through it. It's not really suitable for high quality gem use. But you can see that when these crystals are well formed, a lot of times they will give this six-sided or hexagonal type of outline. This is a pan full of really nice sapphires, hundreds of stones, from the Missouri River country in Montana. Now, this find of sapphires, and actually many tons of sapphires have been mined here, both for industrial and gem use. This find was originally made by gold prospectors who found these unusual stones in their concentrates, and eventually someone went to have it tested and found out they were corundum. They were sapphires. You might make a similar discovery somewhere in Montana or Idaho or adjoining states. This is a couple of handfuls of rough sapphires from Rock Creek, a different location in Montana, but still another one that produces some really nice sapphire crystals. Here's another large lot of multicolor sapphire crystals from a dry cottonwood creek in Montana. And you can see that there's a whole lot of different colors and shapes and sizes here. And like I say, there are a number of Montana creeks, not just the 3 I've mentioned here, but a number of them that produce various amounts of sapphires. And like I say, there are also some in the adjoining state of Idaho as well. Australia also has a number of regions that produce some really nice sapphires as well. This is a find recently made in Australia of a 36 carat sapphire. And although green is not the most favorite color for sapphire, given that this is of its size and fairly oval shaped, it should easily cut a finished gem of over 10 carats. And boy, a 10 carat sapphire, even in green, would be a very valuable stone. You certainly wouldn't want to toss this out to thinking it was just a piece of broken glass or something. And finally, we don't want to forget about the ruby version of corundum. This is a lot of rough ruby from a mine in Mozambique. And you can see the crystals here. They're all beautiful red. These are all quite valuable. I want to add that I did do a whole video on corundum, ruby, and sapphire, showing some great examples of various different crystal shapes and other information about how to identify them. Of course, the big identifying factor for corundum, like ruby, is its hardness, because corundum, although not as hard as diamond, is quite hard, and very few minerals will scratch corundum. In fact, it'll scratch almost anything. So that's the identification factor best for this, but you might want to take a look at that video and see what you think.
Okay, next let's take a look at the garnets. Garnet is actually a whole family of gemstones, and they come in all different colors. Garnets are not just red or red-orange. They can be purple, green, yellow, orange, red. You know, they come in all different colors of the rainbow. And actually the green ones are some of the most valuable. So garnets are actually a very common mineral, and if I had to say what mineral is most commonly found, what gem mineral is most commonly found with gold concentrates, garnet would be the first guess. But, you know, we have to look at the individual characteristics. So let's take a look now at garnet gemstones.
Something similar to this is probably the most likely garnets that you might see in your concentrates. But if you look carefully at these, there's several of these that are fully transparent and would have potential to be cut into gemstones. Now, not every garnet looks like this, but this is the most common type, you know, a reddish color and kind of rounded crystals, because basically the crystal form of garnets, the most common crystal form, is a rounded form that looks a lot like this. This is actually a group of garnet crystals that have grown inside of this rock. Garnets are oftentimes formed by a metamorphic process of heat and pressure, and it basically causes the change of heat and pressure to make garnet crystals very stable, and they will literally grow out of the rock like this. Specimens like this can be valuable, but when the rock wears down and erodes and becomes sand and whatever, the garnet crystals are released and get into streams and other gravels, and you end up with rounded garnet bits, much like what I showed in the last photograph. Here's another beautiful specimen where rounded garnet crystals have grown on a rock, and you can see these are pretty much all transparent and a beautiful peachy orange color, and so pretty much all of the crystals in this specimen have potential as gems. But not all garnets come in these rounded kind of shapes. These are fragments and flat pieces of garnet, and of course it's not a color of red or orange. These are definitely shaded with a purple kind of color, and it shows some of the range of color that garnets can pretty much come in any type of color. And being all transparent, these types of pieces have great potential for gemstones. As I mentioned previously, some of the most valuable garnets of all are those that are green in color. They're almost like an emerald. They're very beautiful, and they're highly prized. They're on the rare side, but they are found and they're highly prized. This beautiful green garnet crystal is quite transparent and very suitable for cutting a gemstone. Crystal like this would be quite valuable, and although this piece came from Africa, there have been beautiful green garnets found in the United States as well. As with the diamond and the sapphires, I have made a complete video about garnets and identifying garnets and what different kinds of garnets look like and the value of the specimens. And so I'm going to put a link to this video right here. And if you have any interest in checking further the beauty of garnets and their potential, because honestly, the gem prospectors are most likely to find, the most likely find is going to be garnets. So check out the video, and I think you find it interesting.
Next, let's take a look at zircon. Now, zircon is actually a way more common mineral than you think. It just doesn't that often form in crystals large enough for gem use. But it is out there. There's certain places in Australia and elsewhere that you can find zircons with your gold concentrates. And let's take a look at the details of zircon.
This is the type of zircon that you're most likely to find when you're out in the field, when you're prospecting with your gold. It'll be rounded, a kind of tan to light brown colored crystals. These can actually be heat treated, and they are in the gem industry, to a light blue color or a nice blue color that is permanent, so the heat treatment works. And that's what you see mostly in jewelry stores, is the blue version of this. Zircon does, however, come in crystals and in many different colors, more than just the light tan brown kind of color. These are red zircon crystals, or kind of reddish with a shade of brown. Were mined in Africa.
Okay, next in our cast of hard and durable gemstones that are heavier than the average rock and that you might find in your cons, we have spinel. And spinel is a lesser known gemstone, but they're really hard and they're really underrated because they can come in a lot of beautiful colors, and they're found all over the world. And for many years in like the Middle Ages and stuff, they didn't distinguish spinel from corundum. So spinel was considered a sapphire too. But nowadays we understand the chemical difference and the hardness difference and all that kind of stuff. And so spinel is its own separate gemstone. So let's take a look at spinel.
This is what spinel looks like. It's multicolored, and this is spinel that was taken from gravel deposits, and you can see the pieces are a little bit rounded and that sort of thing, but it's multicolors with reds and pinks and blues and even some greens, but other colors as well. Spinel comes in pretty much all colors, and so you can see this is what spinel would look like if you were to pull some out of your concentrates. Now, spinel does come in crystals too, and the crystals are diamond shaped, as you can see with this beautiful pink-red example. The crystals like this are actually quite valuable, especially on matrix like this. But spinel can come in these diamond shaped crystals, and frequently you can recognize this shape in their crystals.
And finally, last in our grouping here is the gem topaz. And topaz is found in gravels. It's a hard and durable gem. It's probably a little more fragile than some of these other ones, but it's still durable enough that it's found very often in gravels and that sort of thing, and it can be found with gold. So let's take a look at topaz and the characteristics of it, and we'll be done with our dense gem, so topaz.
So here's a collection of rounded topaz crystals that were taken from gravels. You can see that these do show the effects of rounding, of rolling around in a river. They're colorless. Now, the problem with these is that I've found quartz crystals that have been rolled and rounded in the river, and they look exactly like this. It's hard to tell the difference, and because quartz is 7 and topaz is hardness 8, they're pretty close together in hardness. The one thing that you can sometimes see on these rounded topaz crystals is a cleavage face. Quartz has no cleavage, but topaz has a perfect basal cleavage on the crystal. Commercially, the topaz crystals are treated with radiation with basically an electron beam, a beta particle beam, and you end up with these beautiful blue colors. The radiation doesn't remain in the crystal, so after the process is over, it's not radioactive, but this is the source of the blue topaz you may see in a jewelry store.
Next, let's take a look at the lighter gems. These are the ones that are not so dense. And so if you put them in a sluice or pan, dry washer, they're just going to roll right on through your concentration device. These are things that you're more or less going to see looking at the ground, looking as you're exploring around. You may be prospecting on foot. You might be metal detecting in some old mining district, or just exploring around some old mining dumps or mining area that you're in, and you might see some of these. And I certainly have found some of these myself exploring around and prospecting on the surface. In fact, when I was in Australia, I was metal detecting around, and I found a quartz crystal that was perfectly clear, that was like 2.5 inches in diameter. It's really a beautiful piece. I still have it, of course. And in fact, the Aussie guy that was with me said, "You can't take that out of the country. It's a national treasure." Well, a quartz crystal a couple inches in diameter is nice. It's a good find. It's has some value, not a big value. It's certainly not a national treasure, but it was fun. We had a laugh over it. And so, these things can be found, and they're frequently found. And so I want to alert you to them too. But they're going to be found more on the surface and not in your concentrates. Because they're not particularly dense and could be found on the surface, you need to keep your eyes peeled and be aware of these things when you're walking around. So when you see something different, you see a crystal, you see something flash at you because of its crystal face, you need to be aware of those things and be sure and pick that up. I've also found, a lot of nice quartz related stuff like agates and that sort of thing. And if you keep your eyes open when you're out prospecting, the amount of these things that you find just might surprise you. And if you find something like that, you don't want to ignore it. You want to take it with you. It can have some real value. And so in order to recognize those things, you need to understand a little bit about each of these lighter kinds of gems. Like I say, they're just not that dense, but they're still valuable. They're still very beautiful. So again, we're going to go through each of these stones individually because each of them have their own characteristics. We're going to talk about where they might be found, where you might see them, and what potentially is some of the worth of these things. And so let's talk about them again individually like we did with the denser gems. We're going to start off with the very common mineral quartz. There's quartz. Quartz is one of the most common minerals on the planet of the Earth. In fact, some people say it is the most common mineral on the surface of the Earth. And so, there's a lot of things, but it forms some really beautiful forms. And not just quartz crystals, but, like you say, agates and other things, jaspers, that can be really beautiful. Petrified wood. I've found petrified wood while out prospecting for gold. Anyway, let's talk about quartz and quartz gems and where you might find them and some things that go with quartz. Let's take a look.
Perhaps the most famous and certainly one of the most valuable quartz gems is the amethyst. It's beautiful purple color. It is a prized gemstone and is definitely worth some money. And some mining districts, especially silver mining districts, tend to have a certain part of the quartz that is in the vein to be amethyst. I can tell you I've found amethyst in and around Virginia City or on the famous silver and gold mines up there. Some of the vein, only a small part, but only some of the vein is actually beautiful amethyst. Certainly in and around some quartz veins and looking over some mine dumps, gold mine dumps especially, I have found some wonderful quartz crystals and quartz crystal clusters like this, where you have a group of quartz growing together. Certainly one of the most valuable forms of quartz is this kind of gold quartz. Now, the difference with this and the special about this is it doesn't have cracks all through it. It doesn't have iron stains. You just have white quartz with lines and areas of gold laced through it. This kind of stuff can be cut as a gemstone and is actually very popular gold quartz jewelry, and it's worth a whole lot more than the value of the gold that's in it, because this kind of quartz with this kind of beautiful gold through it is really quite rare. Agate is a very famous type of quartz gem, and it comes in some amazingly beautiful patterns. This is a moss agate with a amethyst color background from northern Nevada. It's a beautiful piece of jewelry. This is another very beautiful form of moss agate with a green moss to it. This is also valuable and very attractive. The banded or lace agates can also be extremely beautiful and valuable, like this specimen here. Now, like some of the other in gemstones we talked about, I did an entire video just on quartz, and I'm going to put a link to that here if you want to really dig into some of the different forms of quartz gems that are out there. I go into a lot more detail even than I have in this little brief survey, so you might want to check that out.
Okay, next we're going to talk about turquoise, a copper mineral, and it's certainly not unusual that gold and copper can be found together. And if you're finding copper, you have the potential for finding turquoise or potentially other copper-related gemstones. So let's talk about turquoise. We'll talk a little bit about copper-related gems too, but let's take a look at the world of turquoise.
Now, I've done real well finding some nice turquoise in Nevada. This is all turquoise that I found. Of course, the upper part is pieces that are still rough. The lower part is pieces that have been already cut. But turquoise comes in beautiful shades of blue and green, and I've found some real nice turquoise in Nevada. Now, there's no doubt that there's an association of gold, silver, and copper together, and sometimes the copper minerals, other than turquoise, can make beautiful gems. This is malachite, the green, and azurite, the blue, but there's also chrysocolla, sometimes makes into beautiful stones. So there's a wide variety of beautifully colored copper minerals that can be considered precious gemstones.
Next, let's take a look at peridot. Peridot is also actually a very common mineral, although it doesn't occur that often in gem form. It's kind of rare in gem form, but it does occur. It is out there, and it's something you want to keep your eyes peeled for. So let's take a look at a little more detail of peridot.
Peridot will occur sometimes as crystals in basalt. They're basically phenocrysts that have grown while the basalt was still molten but had started to crystallize, and this is an example of that. If the fragments of peridot in the crystal are transparent and clean enough, you end up with fragments that look like this, and this is rough gem peridot that you possibly could find.
Next, let's talk about tourmaline. I found tourmaline when I was out prospecting, and I've even actually found green tourmaline, not black tourmaline, green tourmaline when I'm out prospecting. So, it pays to keep your eyes open because there is stuff out there to be found. Let's take a look at a little more detail about about tourmaline.
Here are some typical tourmaline crystals. They're often much longer than they are across. Sometimes they're given the name pencil crystals because they're long and narrow. They often have a rounded triangular cross section. So if you cut across the length of the crystal, you get this rounded triangular section. But the last two minerals I'm going to talk about in this video are tourmaline and beryl, and both of them are closely associated with a type of rock called pegmatite. And pegmatite occurs in dikes or veins, and is made of rock that's much coarser crystalline. In other words, the crystals that are in the rock, the quartz, the mica, the feldspars that are commonly found in a lot of other rocks, are much larger grain. In normal granitic rocks, you might have crystals that are less than a quarter of an inch. In pegmatites, the same crystals might be 5-6 inches, even larger. And pegmatites are also sometimes associated with gold deposits. So these are things that you might find while you are out prospecting for gold.
And finally in this group, the last one we're going to look at is beryl. And beryl is a famous mineral. Most people will know the form of beryl that's a brilliant, beautiful green color because we call that beautiful green beryl emerald. But it's also aquamarine and morganite and several other gems as well. And so we'll take a look at beryl and the various different forms of it and what you might find in the field when you're out prospecting.
So here are some examples of beryl crystals. Now, I admit these are kind of museum quality specimens, and that's not likely what you're going to be finding in the field. But the middle crystal that's kind of a light blue color, that would be the most common find, light blue to light green, oftentimes hexagonal, six-sided shaped crystals. You can see that easily in the pink crystal on the left. But beryl comes in all colors. The crystal on the right is not green enough or not blue-green enough to be considered an emerald, but if it were the bright blue-green, it could be an emerald. Now, emerald crystals, I don't know of any that are actually closely associated with gold deposits, but there are places where aquamarine, the blue kind of color, is found in the same area.
So there's no question that a number of valuable gemstones can be found in the field when you're out prospecting for gold. Now, as I've said, the other valuable gems aren't always associated with gold, but you'd be surprised if you keep your eyes open how frequently there are other things associated with the gold that have some value that you don't want to throw away. And by watching this video, you now have a better handle to recognize some of these gems in the field. So whether you're a seasoned prospector or just getting started, this is the kind of thing that the knowledge that you need to have to be successful when you're out prospecting. You know, one of the things you should always carry with you when you're prospecting is a loupe, high magnification, so you can see stuff up close. This allows you not only to examine gems, but to examine potential gold finds and that sort of thing. So always have, at a minimum, a loupe with you. I always have a loupe. Another thing you might consider taking with you that I don't always take it with me, but I frequently do, is a hardness testing kit. You know, so you can scratch things and see, you know, how hard is this mineral that you're interested in and finding. And together with crystal shapes and stuff like that, you can identify minerals. Now, for you guys who watch my videos and have watched a number of them, you may know that I recently promised that I would do a video on identification of gemstone minerals. This is actually not that video. I'm still going to do one that focuses just on identifying specific gemstones and how to look at something and know what it is. This is just a kind of an introduction. It's the kind of telling you why you need to have the skills of being identifying gemstones, because you might make a find out in the field, and you, again, as I say a bunch of times, you don't want to toss out valuable rocks. So that full gemstone ID video is coming soon, but for now you have a feel for how important it is to have that knowledge as a gold prospector. Now, in my videos, I always talk about how being a prospector is about what you know. That the more you know, the higher the likelihood of your being successful. If you go out in the field and you don't know anything and you don't have any background and nobody to help you, you know, you're going to have a lot tougher time. It doesn't guarantee that you won't find any gold, but it certainly will be more difficult. And so to impart to you the skills of the prospector, the knowledge that you need to know in the various facets of geology, gold formation, and that sort of thing, I wrote a book. And my book is called Fistful of Gold, because hey, that's what I want you to go out and find yourself a fistful of gold. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now.
So this is my book, Fistful of Gold. You can see it's an encyclopedia distilling down my 45 plus years of prospecting experience plus my degree into the parts that you need to know. I spent most of 10 years writing this. It was not just a simple effort that, I sat down and wrote it. You can see it's like 250,000 words. It's not something you're going to read through in a day or maybe even a week or more. But it's got a lot of information and reference material that you can come back to. You know, you can read it once and read it again and get more out of it because there's just that much depth of material in this. I wrote this book because I want you to have the skills to go out and find fistfuls of gold for yourself. And if you have the skills and know what you're doing and get out in the field and make a real effort, you can find significant gold. It's not easy. I'm not going to tell you that because, you know, gold, it wouldn't be, close to $2,000 an ounce, which is what it is right now. It wouldn't be so expensive if it was easy to find. It's not easy. You just can't walk out into an old gold field and start picking up nuggets. If the gold was easy to see and find, the old timers would have picked it up and taken it themselves. So you got to have skill. You got to know what you're doing. You got to be able to master what it takes to find gold, and you've got to have the persistence and put in the effort to find the material, to find the gold or diamonds or gemstones that you're looking for. Now, this book has geology, it has facts about gold, it has stuff about diamonds and platinum, but it's mostly about gold deposits, how gold deposits form, how placer and nuggets form, all the questions you've probably wanted to ask. The book is available on Amazon, and I'll put a link to it in the description below, but you can look up on Amazon, Fistful of Gold, and by Chris Ralph, and find this book. Now, the book, if you look on it, it has a very high rating. It has like a 4.7 or 4.8 out of 5, which is really high. I mean, it's hard to please everybody, but I'm close to a 5 out of 5, not far from it, right? So it's been out. I've sold more than 15,000 copies of this book, and I've had tremendous response, tremendous positive response by the people who buy it. And I think if you buy it, you'll be just as happy with it. Now, in addition to my book, I also have a website that I do, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my website and show you some images from the website right now.
Now, my website is nevadaoutbackgems.com, and I'll put a link to the prospecting page, this prospecting encyclopedia page, down in the description below, but you can find it at Nevada Outback Gems. I sell some jewelry, turquoise, other gemstones there. I don't always keep the inventory perfectly up to date, so if you're interested in anything you see, do contact me first before trying to send me money or anything, because I want you to be able to get what you order. But the website has lots of different stories, old adventures, even some stories, true stories from the old-time miners of the 1800s. So I think it's something you'll find interesting.
The other thing I want to go back to is that all my comments, I want you guys to ask questions on the comments for my videos. I answer 100% of the comments that are made on my videos. Now, sometimes if somebody just says, hey, great video, I really enjoyed it, the comment may just be, well, I'm really glad you liked it. Or if it's a simple question. And sometimes I get people who ask me questions, I would take a book to answer that question. And I recommend that they just buy the book. But I answer all my questions. I try to help people as much as I can. I'm here to help you. So if you're interested in gaining the skills, if you're interested in knowing what you need to know to be successful, follow along with me. Subscribe to my channel, hit the bell so that they'll let you know when I come out with new videos, and I try to do that pretty much every Saturday morning. And you'll enjoy with me, you'll come along with me, we'll have an adventure together, and we will find some nice gold and see what it's really like getting out in the woods, or the deserts, or the mountains, wherever we land, wherever the gold is, wherever the diamonds are, wherever the platinum is. Come along, we'll have some fun. And I'll see you real soon on the next video.